This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
One thing is for sure, never a dull moment in Leafs Nation. What's happening? Presented by Botano and Skip. It's the Monday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. And you heard right there, we got another brand new sponsor on the show, Jay Rosehill. Welcome, Botano. What's up, buddy?
Sick, man. The betting world is taking over the world, man. But yeah, exciting stuff happening, and both in the show sponsorships and the Leafs Nation, obviously. Good, man. Happy to start a new week.
Can you give me a breakdown first and foremost of what transpired off the air 10 seconds before we came on the air and you yelling crazily?
Wow, my wife's upstairs doing her thing, and then I just got to let her know we're going live on air, and it's kind of like a mom meatloaf moment there where you just got to say, I never know what she's doing up there.
Dude, we think it's simpatico because that's exactly what I thought. I'm like, what's happening right now? Okay, that clarifies that. Secondly, let's get to Michael Bunting to start. For those of you who have been watching and listening to this show quite a bit the last couple of months, we like to start off with a warm-up, and maybe somebody down the road can sponsor this segment. But Michael Bunting being Michael Bunting, and somehow, Rosie, a 10-minute misconduct for this.
That's embarrassing, man. Like, there's going to be so many people that are like, well, stop doing that shit. But do you know how many guys over the course of the decades have been, agitators like this? You're trying to draw these guys in to punch you in the face and drop you and take an undisciplined penalty. You're trying to bait them. You're being a little bit of a rat, and you got to walk the line. And where there's sometimes you think that Bunting does it the right way or not. Think of all the guys that have come before him who can do that stuff. And you walk the line, and everyone kind of knows where the line is. And for some reason, the ref's like, I'm going to lower the bar on where the line is and give you a 10-minute misconduct for kind of skating backwards and dragging the guy's stick. It's bullshit. And I don't agree with it. And I honestly think that he's being targeted unfairly, but I think it's happened because while he's doing that job, he tends to scream at the refs. And you're just never, ever going to get anything positive come out of that. You're not going to change their mind. You're not going to make them think, oh, I'm going to give them a benefit of the doubt next time. You're going to say, F this guy, I'm going to show him, I'm not going to put up with his BS. He's not running the show here. And they showed it right there. And he's been taking, penalties that he probably doesn't deserve. I mean, he's getting cross checks in the back last night, and he gets the, what do you call it? The unsportsmanlike for diving. And he's like literally already on his stomach for getting cross. I just don't like it. I don't think it's fair. But if all I could say is for him going forward, you just can't be yelling at the refs, but maybe his reputation's already taken over, I guess.
Yeah, these are pretty much reputation calls, and we've seen it throughout the season. I will say the one thing I didn't like was the Maple Leafs utilizing the media to their benefit after the game, saying, yeah, we're going to get Kyle to talk to the NHL. Like, do this behind closed doors. I don't know about you, how you feel about that, but Sheldon Keefe, I guess, was polled about it. The players are polled about it, and pretty much got to the point where they're like, we got to say something here because this is not right. And I get it. I'm totally with them. I think this is ridiculous. Watching that made me think a lot of those wars between Colorado and Detroit in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I remember these because they used to show them on Rock'em Sock'em all the time. Remember like the stick play where a guy would steal a stick, bring it onto the like it was bedlam. And now you look at what the NHL has become, and you're giving a guy a 10-minute misconduct for this. He's just trying to get under their skin. He was successful in that. But what did you make of the Leafs going public with their anger towards this?
Yeah, I mean, when you get annoyed enough and you think there's injustice or whatever, you're gonna speak that out. I mean, whether it does it or not, I don't know. You're just letting it be known that you notice something that you don't think is right. Yeah. And when it's like that, where it's clear favoritism. I mean, the whole thing about referees and officials, it like they have no names on the backs of their jerseys. It's just player for player. You call the act for what it is, no matter who it is or how it happens. And they're clearly not doing that with Bunting. And it's a bad look for officiating. It's a bad look for the NHL. It's not the end of the world. And these guys are human, but you just can't. Yeah. You can't, if it was anyone else doing that, it wouldn't have been a 10-minute misconduct. If it was anyone else getting cross-checked in the back, they wouldn't have got a diving penalty. So it's clear you're saying, I don't like this guy, so I'm going to penalize him. And you cannot go down that road no matter what the reasoning is. And it's just, you've had think of Marchand, what he got away with for years and years and years. And it's like, if you do it right, you can like draw penalties, let alone not put yourself down. And I don't think what he's doing warrants being put down and given penalties and 10-minute misconducts. It's not right in my opinion. And I'm not doing that to be a homer or whatever, because we follow the Leafs. It's just not right. You shouldn't give one player an assessment for just because of reputation. You can't do that. You can't go down that road.
Yeah, and contrary to popular belief, as you mentioned, these guys are human beings, that being the referees. And some days they're going to be angry, some days they're not. And they do have long, long memories. And I'm sure they do, specifically with a guy like Michael Bunting. He's always in the thick of things. They could be playing Buffalo, Detroit, Columbus. It does not matter. He's doing his thing out there. And so I wanted to bring that up because I just thought it was so ridiculous how that was handled last night, but a reputation call nonetheless. Remember to subscribe, tap that like button, leave us a review wherever you're checking us out. At the Leafs Nation 401 here on YouTube. If you have not subscribed yet, if you're watching right now, please hit that subscribe button at the Leafs Nation 401. Additionally, we are available wherever you find your podcast. So Leafs Morning Take is the search, and you'll be able to find us nice and simple. Make sure to subscribe, and please do us a solid there. Don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest on all things Toronto Maple Leafs. Thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns, you can drop us a line in the chat down below here on YouTube. But we got a lot to talk about I should say. So let's get over the boards. Here we go again. Okay, so this is going to be a fun conversation. We've had it multiple times on the show this season. Where do you want to start things off with everything that transpired in the first period on Sunday night against Detroit?
Well, I mean, I've always given Murray the benefit of the doubt. I've always said, you don't win 2 cups and have the repertoire that he's got behind him without having a level of compete and battle, and guys go through bad luck, and some guys' bodies just tend to get hurt. And I've always done that. And then last night, he looks shaky as hell to start. I mean, he gets a breakaway on him for the first shot of the night. I understand that's not ideal. But he just looks like, I think he tweeted something about him cringing every time he goes into the butterfly and just feeling like he's an old man not moving very well. And it seems like there's a pattern of him saying, there's my excuse to get the hell out of here. And he just leaves. And, I understand he got his legs taken out from him, and he falls down and kind of whacks his head, I guess. I mean, let's not forget he's got a friggin' helmet on, right? Wasn't a wildly, so okay, that's a grown man falling down. He's covered head to toe in equipment, and he's just like throwing Samsonov to the wolves. That's what gets me, is like, Murray, if you don't battle through this, you're putting Sammy in there, who is a goaltender that we very, very important to us right now. He's been playing fantastic. He's probably the starter. You guys are buddies. You guys are in the same role, and you go down like that and you just don't come back. You're, nah, I can't. Like, you should be doing everything you can. No, I'm good. I can play. Take the intermission, take whatever. He just doesn't come back from that kind of a fall. I'm just like, dude, what's your level of compete? How hurt are you? Do you have a concussion from that? I kind of have trouble believing that. Did you do anything to try to get back in? I would like to hear if they were like, absolutely not. You're not going back in. We're doing the protocol, and this game means nothing. But if that were the case and Woll was in the net, I'd have no problem with it. But you're throwing Sammy to the Wolves for like the 3rd time this year, and it's just not right. It's not fair. And I'm starting to question his compete level and where his head's at and how bad he wants to be in the net. And that's the first time I've done that this year.
Yeah, exactly. I was quick to jump on it because the track record has been there for quite a bit of time. Now, firstly, I will say it's tough to comment on what happened behind the scenes. The Leafs could have easily said, you know what, you have a history of concussions. We're not throwing you back out there. But I, for one, doubted from the second. As soon as he went down, I'm like, there's no chance in hell if he leaves this game, he's coming back. And that's exactly what we saw. They showed the video, the picture of Ilya Samsonov stretching before the second period. I'm like, that's it. That's all for the night of Matt Murray. The timeliness is not great, but it really made me wonder if this is real life Final Destination. I don't know if you've seen those movies, man. Well, like, the amount of fluky and freaky injuries that happen on a yearly basis to Matt Murray is egregious to me, where I'm past the point of calling this guy a Band-Aid and more so feeling bad for him because he's always injured. There's not much more you can say, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, his reputation preceded him, and guys were talking about him being that way. But you know what? You can't throw the towel in right now and say, are we done with Matt Murray? Because we don't know what the future holds. We don't even know where he's at right now. Maybe the trainers of the powers that be said, you know what? We're not throwing you back into this kind of a nothing game. But and he's going to be fine, and he's just checking things out, and he very well could go into the playoffs and get his chance in the playoffs and play quite well, which he's shown that he's capable of still doing. But it's just every day and every thing that happens just points more and more towards Samsonov being the starter going into it. And I'm fine with that. He's fantastic for us this year. He's a high quality goalie with good caliber and reputation behind him. He's a first rounder recently. Whatever happened in Washington, it was the bubble, remember? And I've always liked signing Sammy as an insurance policy because of the injury history. And here we go. And we're going to use him a lot. And we have leaned on him, and it's been fine. But it's yet to be seen with Murray. Like, are you ready for the playoffs or not? Do you want to be on this roster? Do you want to be the starting goalie or not? Because they don't get a chance to show you a lot. But what he does show is that he's easily able to take himself out of the crease and go back to the dressing room where maybe that's his comfort zone. I don't know where his head's at, but he certainly doesn't look like he's doing everything he can to battle for this team and make sure he stays in net.
Well, that's exactly it. To me, ultimately, it comes down to the question: how much intestinal fortitude do you have? How badly does that fire burn for you? And when I see Matt Murray, when I think of Matt Murray, I just don't feel and think that way. But I wonder, from a player's perspective, you having played in the NHL, what goes through the head of a player when you see somebody like that? And, it doesn't necessarily have to be a goalie. It can be a forward. It could be a defenseman, whoever on that roster. There's no doubt in the room, guys murmur to each other. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. And you see this happen over and over and over again. It's like, here we go again, no?
Tough to say. It would be kind of a personal thing. I think that guys are so busy with their own stuff and trying to stay on top of their own, lives and careers and play and mindset and do everything they can. You notice, oh yeah, Murray's down again. And what's the story? What's the story? What do they say about him? And you get the information. Okay, you take that and then you go on with your business. There's not a whole lot. I don't think guys are in the shower saying, what the hell is this guy's deal? But it's definitely noticeable of like, oh shit, here we go again. But it's tough to say, man. I don't want to say too much until we figure out what his deal is. I mean, if he's out and he cannot play the rest of the week and this and that, it's just like, dude, how soft do you have to be? I mean, I'd like to give a guy the benefit of the doubt, and maybe his head is rattled up or whatever. But at the same time, I am watching. I'm a grown man who can watch a guy kind of fall down with full gear on. That's not enough to. I'm just sorry. Like that's not. You watch this. Go watch that game and do a highlight clip of guys getting smashed against the boards and falling down to the ice and getting whacked and cross-checked, and their head gets rattled around. And it's like that happens. It's not enough to. It just didn't seem like. It's of course because it's Matt Murray. He just falls down to the ice when someone knocks him down unexpectedly, and he's just out of the game. And Sammy's got to come in cold as hell. He's getting overworked. What if he almost looked a little bit sluggish getting out of one of those plays? And it's just like, fuck me, man. Are you seriously going to put us in this position where we could, have Sammy get hurt too, and just the whole season comes tumbling down like you're playing with fire?
They knew this was coming, though, right? Like, and they mean Kyle Dubas. They went out there, they stuck their neck out for a guy they knew, former Sioux Greyhound, two-time Stanley Cup champion with the Pittsburgh Penguins, got this elite resume. They knew they had to have known what they were getting into. I, for one, am not perplexed. I'm not surprised at all. This has been Matt Murray for X amount of years, whether it be Pittsburgh, with the Ottawa Senators, and now with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Ultimately, to me, and again, call me crazy, but I think this acquisition, this trade, could end up costing Kyle Dubas his job. And I mean that, thinking that Ilya Samsonov is the number one guy. Having said that, you need more than one goalie in the Stanley Cup playoffs. If your name's not Andrei Vasilevsky, there's a couple others, Igor Shesterkin. But to suggest that Ilya Samsonov could be the guy for the entire series is kind of scary. Joseph Woll's had a great season, but let's not forget, he's really, really young. It's just really disappointing to me from the Murray perspective, but I can't say I was not expecting this. Like, Rosie, we've seen it throughout this season. The guy just can't stay healthy. But again, I get to the point where I just feel bad for him because of the amount of fluky and freaky injuries. Like, you can't even chirp him anymore because the way he gets hurt is ridiculous to me. Like, Lucas Raymond loses an edge, bumps into him. Matt Murray's not expecting it, falls back, and hits his head. Like, you can't even plan that if you did that 100 times out of 100.
I know, and it's a big deal because he gets taken out where you could watch, again, a highlight reel clip after clip of goalies getting ran into and falling over, and, they usually just get up. But Murray just never does. So I don't know. You say it's scary to have Samsonov in the playoffs. I don't think it's scary. I think he looks freaking phenomenal. You see some of the saves he made last
Yeah,
night.
but
He didn't have any preparation. He didn't get any of his warm up. You should see some of the shit these goalies do in order to be as acrobatic as they are, before a game, to get their bodies and, I mean, their hips and their groins and everything they got to do to get to the point where they're putting themselves in those positions to make those saves. He didn't get to do any of it because he doesn't start the game. So he has to sit there for a while and just be cold as hell. And then he goes in and, like, the game in everyone's mind was fucking just lit on fire after that first period anyways, but he made some ridiculous saves. He has kept them in the games. I have full support in Samsonov, and I had for months now going into it thinking that he is the best goaltender for this team, and his numbers show it, his wins show it, his attitude shows it, his play shows it. It's just like, I have no problem with this guy going, and what have you done for me lately? And the answer is he's done a lot for this team, and he's hot, and we can totally ride him into this thing and see what happens with Murray.
let's mesh this into the weekend recap here. So I thought Samsonov was phenomenal against Ottawa on Saturday, and I sort of laugh, like, they want to play this guy more on the road, but is playing in Ottawa really a road game? It felt more like a home game again for the Leafs, but he gets the shutout. Another brilliant effort. Redeems a Horna, scores in his Maple Leafs debut. Love to see the plugs chip in from time to time. Detroit game, whatever. We're going to talk about load management. Marner didn't play. McCabe didn't play. Giordano didn't play. Again, we've been talking about this ad nauseum for like 3 weeks. The games don't matter in terms of the standings. They're feeling pretty comfortable. They're going to get home ice here against Tampa. They just want to be healthy. And that's the big word getting into the Stanley Cup playoffs. But, getting back to the conversation about Ilya Samsonov, I trust is a big thing for me. And I think the Stanley Cup playoffs is a way different animal. The track record, the resume is not there. And I tell you, game one hits and you face that first bit of scrutiny, adversity. I just wonder how Samsonov's going to react. That's it.
Well, you go look at all the goaltenders who have played in one series over the last go back 5 years, and they don't all have sterling records of proven thing. The reason you get a sterling record of being a proven goalie is you go into the playoffs and you get the job done. That's how you get a reputation. You got to start somewhere, and that's where Sammy is. He's starting right here, and he's showing nothing but stopping a shitload of pucks and winning a lot of games and playing really good hockey.
Yeah, but I see your point. But in most of those series, teams are not playing the best goaltender on the planet, where the margin for error is razor thin. Now, I know automatically people in the chat are going to bring up, well, Jack Campbell and Andrei Vasilevsky had the same .897 save percentage in last year's series, and I get it. But when push comes to shove and it gets later in a series, the numbers are the numbers, and Vasilevsky gets better and better as the games go on. When you look at Ilya Samsonov, the track record's not there. The sample size is short. And when you stack him up specifically against Andrei Vasilevsky, it is night and day for me. That's all I'm saying.
That's fine, but that's not his problem. He's got to stop pucks, and that's what he's doing. It doesn't it's not how Sammy does in net has nothing to do with how Vasilevsky does in net. That's the player's job, is to solve him and make the plays and get him moving and solve him. And Sammy's job is to do exactly what he's doing right now. So regardless of what happens on the other end in the other crease, it's not, I mean, if you want to put the numbers up beside each other and compare, that's fine, but it's got nothing to do with Sammy. He's just going to go stop the puck, do the best job he can. And why not have confidence in what he's been doing this year and how he looks and where his head's at, where his abilities are, how high his confidence is. It's just like, nobody knows what's going to happen in that series, but we can sit here and say, you know what we have with this goaltender has been quite good, Murray aside.
Yeah, fair enough. And we'll see what transpires over the next couple of weeks. And suddenly, Joseph Wall, that conversation we had last week, becomes a bit more pertinent and relevant, not knowing the status of Matt Murray. And unsurprisingly, after the game, they gave us nothing. But when it comes to Matt Murray, I just proceed thinking he's not going to be there until I'm proven wrong. I'm sorry to say, that's just the way, it's been with Matt Murray the last couple of years. He's just so unpredictable. And that's the one position you would love some predictability, is in between the pipes. But so be it. Onwards we move to load management. But first, let me tell you about Mitch's Dishes, brought to you by our new friends over at Skip. We're happy to tell you about Mitch's Dishes by Skip. Using the promo code TLN15 on the Skip the Dishes app, you'll get $15 off when you spend $30 or more on Mitch's Dishes. Please note that this offer is exclusive to Skip. Additionally, a portion of the proceeds will be donated to the Marner Assist Fund to combat food insecurity. Skip is currently serving up game time eats across the GTA in Ontario, in the likes of Brampton, Guelph, Kitchener, Toronto, Oshawa, and Waterloo, among other great places. If Mitch likes it, it's got to be great. I tried it out this past weekend. The chicken wings, Rosie, phenomenal stuff. I will tell you that.
Did you use the promo code?
I did. I got the promo code. You could only use it once, so make sure you jump at it quickly. I believe only the first 300 people will have access to this promo code to get $15 off when you spend $30 or more on Mitch's dishes. So we get to the load management conversation. We saw it again last night, as mentioned. No Marner, no McCabe, no Giordano. By the way, the Leafs have now rested every single one of the 9 defensemen on their roster since the trade deadline. And I was almost like in stitches laughing seeing Connor Timmins out there for the first time since February 24th. And what was it, like the first shift? Tough pass to Sam Lafferty. Ollie Mata, a defenseman, comes the other way on a partial breakaway and snipes, and it's 1-0 Detroit, just like that.
Yeah, tough bounce. Not what you want when you've been out for a little while. I've been there before where, whatever happens and the stars don't align and you don't get in the lineup for a while, and then you get thrown out there cold and you just want to get your feet under you. You want to get some shifts under. You want to see the timing of it and feel the puck a little bit. And to have a mistake like that go into your net is just the worst case scenario. But on the other side of it, you got to, at least there's reason for it. The guy's been, rusty as hell. And I don't mind this load management stuff right now. I didn't like it when there's 16 games left to play and we don't know what we're doing with the lineup and we can't really get anything going. Now, you got the last week or two of the season here. You're going to start plucking guys out and doing a little rotation and just getting the percentages of how much effort they're expending and energy, and the chances of injury just start to go down, and kind of manage that a little bit, how much load you're putting on these guys. And I'm totally fine with it. And on the other side of things, you get other guys to jump up and, be able to touch the ice a little bit more in the NHL. You get to see what you have. If shit hits the fan in the playoffs, you get to see where everyone's head's at as far as down the pipeline and throughout your depth. So I got no problem with it at all. I don't like to see Sammy get thrown in there back to back, thrown to the Wolves like he was, and it didn't go well, obviously. But some of those things you can't control are what you're trying to prevent by doing this load management thing. And at this point in the season, I think is the time to do that. Yes.
Yeah, we even saw my Paisan Nick Alberga play his season debut last night, pick up an assist in that game, redeems a Horna, of course, who they got in the Dryden Hunt deal at the deadline, snipes in his debut. He's a big body presence, 6'6" up front. So I like these stories of guys who wouldn't necessarily get that opportunity in a juggernaut team like the Maple Leafs late in the season, get that opportunity. With all that in mind, I think down the stretch, you mentioned it, about 6 games remaining in this regular season. I want to see Matthews and JT and Nylander sit at least one of those games. Like, I want to make sure these guys are 1,000% for game one, fresh, rested, and feeling good about their game all in one, right?
Yeah, for sure. Give the guys a little break. It's not going to throw off anybody by breaking up lines because they've hardly had lines that have stayed consistent. So they should be used to it when a guy gets pulled out of the lineup who normally wouldn't be, and you got to mix the lines up a little bit and introduce some new bodies into that lineup. So they're used to that, which is fine. And it's a nice time of year where, some guys can step up, like you were talking about your boy, to go in there and get a goal and chip in. It's guys where guys can make themselves contracts for the next year. On Thursday, we're going to have a guest on, Tim Stapleton. Some people might remember that name. Timmy got a chance with the around this time of year with the Toronto Maple Leafs, got called up, and he's a skilled forward coming out of college, and he got a chance in the shootout around this time of year. I think the Leafs were out of the playoffs, but he scored the shootout winner. And I remember talking to him going, holy shit, I couldn't go out for dinner the next night because people were like mobbing me about the game the night before. He goes from a nobody to, a known guy. And I was laughing going, I guess that's the Toronto market. And I was traded there right after him. So it was, it's interesting to talk to those guys this time of year. It makes for good storylines, especially when you're just waiting for the bloody playoffs to start and you get to see some of that happen.
Hey, did you see who the E-Bug was last night after the Murray injury?
No, the what?
The E-Bug, so the emergency backup goalie. I was there for the David Ayres game a couple years ago. That was an absolute fucking joke, man. It was a joke the way the Leafs came out when David Ayres came in that game. And he's still a celebrity after that game, like 3-4 years later. Carolina still flies him out there. I think it's so embarrassing for the Leafs. Like, even from the Leafs perspective, I still can't get over that game. We're a couple years removed. But it was Curtis Joseph last night who was the E-Bug. So he would have gone in if Ilya Samsonov got hurt, which, again, and I've talked about this throughout the season. I've followed this team, covered them from a media perspective longer than you, clearly. I've seen everything in like 12 years covering this team. That would have been the cherry on top. The Leafs don't know to lose properly. Every time they lose, there's some sort of embarrassment attached to it. That would have been the cherry on top if Curtis Joseph, 3,000-year-old Curtis Joseph, came into the game last night because they had nobody else. So thankfully it didn't happen, Rosie.
I was watching highlights today and they're like, and look who it is. And then I thought they said, no, he wasn't the emergency backup, but that would have been crazy. Or was he? I don't know. But just seeing him in his like alumni jacket with a bag over his shoulder was hilarious, man. And it's interesting when like, it is interesting to say, like, what do you do when two goaltenders go down? And it's you get the David Ayers, storylines and stuff like that. But hopefully you're on the good side of it, not the ugly side of it where the Leafs found themselves a couple of years back.
Yeah, so my mistake, I was duped because I did see a Mike Zeisberger tweet last night that suggested that Curtis Joseph was the e-bug, but I'm now seeing his timeline, him saying that he was not the e-bug. So my mistake on that front, but it wasn't even April Fool's yesterday. I'm very curious to see who would have came into that game. So throw away anything we just said the last 5 minutes because I read it incorrectly, and I read that from a couple different people last night on social media that it was Curtis Joseph. Unfortunately, it was not. I'd love to see Cujo back in the blue and white. Having said that, let's get to the Betano wrap-up right now. We're getting back into the betting conversation here on Leafs Morning Take. Very quiet slate for this Monday, Rosie, but one game I have my eye on is that Minnesota-Vegas game. So back on Saturday, Minnesota was in Vegas at T-Mobile Arena, and the Golden Knights won 4-1 on home ice. So this time around, I'm going to take Minnesota to win the back end of the home and home here. They're 24-11-3 at XL Energy Center, and both teams jockeying for playoff positioning right now in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I think they're both looking to try to win their division still, and it's not a done deal. So I'd actually prefer that when you have something to play for and you just keep going. Because I remember when in the position that the Leafs are in right now, it's difficult because you're going. Everyone knows the points aren't that important, and you're not really playing for that. And I remember the coach is just constantly trying to remind guys, we got to keep playing with urgency. We got to keep playing at a high level. We can't take days off. These are important, and you can't just turn it on day one of the playoffs and blah, blah, blah. And you look at the Golden Knights and the Minnesota Wild here, still battling to win, divisions and whatnot. So it's a little different looks for different teams this time of year. And these guys obviously having a big game against each other here tonight. So, yeah, it's something to watch for sure.
So looking now at the chat, and it's on fire. Appreciate everybody tuning in here on this Monday as we're now 2 weeks away from the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs. April 17th is the start date, by the way. We don't have confirmation. We know over the weekend, we did find out, we've known this for like 3 months, but it's going to be Toronto and Tampa in round one. It looks like the Leafs are going to have home ice, but we don't know yet when that series is going to start. My assumption, it's either going to be the 17th, which is a Monday, or the 18th, which is a Tuesday. So stand by for confirmation on that. We go to the chat. Sean writes in, I feel like Murray shows relief when he gets injured. Like, woo, I don't have to play and I'm getting paid. I can't go that far. I've been tough on Matt Murray throughout this season, but man, I'm at a point where it's like, I've seen it all. Bless you. I've seen it all. And I'm over ripping the guy because I honestly feel bad for him at this point. Like, he gets hurt so much. Like, it's Final Destination in real life, man.
Yeah, it's hard not to say. Like, it feels like there's a sigh of relief when he goes out, or he's looking for an excuse to get out of there when he doesn't look good. And I mean, we were tweeting about how rough he kind of looked that first few minutes in the first period, and then as soon as he gets an opportunity, he's straight to the locker room, never to return. But it is tough. Something to bring up here. I'm looking at the Frozen Four schedule here. Matthew Nyes plays on Thursday, and I think that could be it for him if they don't win that game because the finals national championship is on Saturday. But nonetheless, he will be available after this week to sign. And it'll be interesting to watch and see what his decision is. I'm sure he kind of already knows what it is, and no one just has been announced to his decision. But I honestly would really love this guy to sign. And then when they're doing this load management, they bring him in, throw him 4 NHL games, 3 NHL games, and see what he looks like, man. It would be interesting as hell down the stretch here.
You're always beaming when you talk about this kid, man. I'm just tempering expectations. I just have so much PTSD from remember Nick Robertson, man? Like, I know it's a different type of player, a different type of story, but Nick Robertson, it's just overhyped in this market. Everybody's talking about he was so dominant in the OHL. He was incredible. But let's not forget, this is the National League. And on top of that, this is the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, you're at the most elite of levels. And to suggest a guy who's playing college hockey is going to jump right in and be a difference maker. I can't get to that level. But I'm happy you brought up Matthew Knies because, again, we interviewed him a couple months back. Go back here at the Leafs Nation 401 where you can subscribe to our YouTube page. The interview's up there as well, some clips as well. So make sure to go check out that interview. And maybe a couple tea leaves were left by Matthew Knies in that interview as to if he's going to actually sign with this team or not, maybe even potentially what number he'll wear. So make sure to go check that out. Josh writes in, Rosehill for NHL commissioner. What would you think of that, Rosie?
Woohoo! No, that'd be bad. I'd rather run the PA than run the NHL, man. It's
of course you would. Classic
tough
player,
gig, man. Tough gig.
Yeah.
All those billionaires just wanting to rake in even more money. I was this weekend. I was having some beers with some buddies, and they had no idea what escrow was. They had no idea about like the lockout. They thought it was the same thing as a strike. And I was doing a little education session on what exactly it is with escrow and where that money goes, and it comes right off the players' checks, and it goes to prop up the teams like Phoenix. And yeah, I don't think I could go. I'm not a corporate guy as far as Gary Bettman and all those owners and what their aims are with their pocketbooks and stuff. I'd way rather be the head of the PA.
Yeah, classic player for sure. Just finishing up our thoughts on the chat. Gary K writes in brick wall, like the pun there. Super Strict says you obviously have to be careful with concussions. I get that from the Murray perspective. What else we got here? A lot of people in the chat today. Raymond raises his right leg, lifting Murray's left leg. Only then does Murray fall backwards. James Baxter writes that in. I don't want to get into that semantics, but again, it's just it's kind of scary when you look at the goaltending situation where it was, say, 24 hours ago to what we're feeling now with Matt Murray down, Ilya Samsonov there, and presumably Joseph Woll, who's only 24, as Super Strict writes in, to potentially be the backup in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But again, that's going to be an incredible story if that is the case going into the postseason, because everybody wants that next Jordan Binnington, and that question's been asked in this market for the last couple of weeks. Can Joseph Woll be that guy? I don't know if they can repeat history.
Yeah, Woll looks good. I mean, honestly, if we're getting ahead of ourselves, if we start the playoffs on the 18th or 17th or whatever it is, and Matt Murray's still freaking off roster because of that,
he's not going to be there. Come on, he's gone.
Oh my God, he tipped over. He's out.
Dude,
tipped over. Season over. I'd fucking lose it if that was the case. If he wants to take a little rest and make sure he's fine, okay. If you don't play in the playoffs or address on the bench in the playoffs because of that incident, fucking light the league on fire.
Guy's been resting since he won his second cup with Pittsburgh. And I'll leave you with this. I'll bring back January 27th, Nick Alberga, Jay Rosehill in the alumni box at Scotiabank Arena, getting set for a Matt Murray revenge game against the Ottawa Senators. We show up, hurt his ankle in the pregame, but apparently was good enough to back up because he's wearing the ball cap on the bench, but not playing the game. So there you have it, Rosie.
It's a tough look. Good thing we got Sammy back there. All eggs getting moved to the Sammy basket if they weren't already.
And that's perfect because it's Easter next weekend. So we're going to leave it at that. Right. And coming up tomorrow, Rosie, we're going to tee up the game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. I can't wait to see who they rest tomorrow. Maybe it's JT, maybe it's Matthews. Sneakily, I'm probably looking at Columbus in that game. You watch that game against Detroit. I think a lot of these guys just getting ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs. And there's not a lot to look forward to the last couple games. Matthew Knies for sure. Number 2, Ryan O'Reilly. But outside of that, just get me to game 1 against Tampa, please.
Yeah, agreed. It's kind of a shitty time of year. Let's be honest. It's a balancing act, trying to stay ready, trying to care about things, just wanting to get to the promised land. When you've done that's one of the drawbacks of doing so well in the season. When you got home ice wrapped up and there's games and games and games left, frick, good on you, man. That's a tip of the cap to teams that accomplished that because it means you got it done in the regular season. But got to stay focused, stay on top of things, and get to that promised land where the games mean a lot again. But that will be interesting when Ryan O'Reilly comes back. See who they load manage here. See if they bring up Joseph Woll, see if they want to get him touches. I was wondering why he wasn't on the bench last night, but probably with the Marlies schedule and whatnot, it was better for him to stay there and play and stay sharp. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but I'm going to be watching the ticker pretty closely to see if there's any announcement on our fella Matt Murray.
And, of course, you can go over to theleafsnation.com for the very latest on all things Toronto Maple Leafs. So we'll leave it at that. We'll be back on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time for a preview of the Leafs and the Columbus Blue Jackets. For Jay Rosehill and producer Alex, I'm Nick Alberga. Thanks so much for listening and watching. Take care.